Hey gang, we're back with another install video. Today what we're going to do is show you how the front disc brakes go together on a disc brake conversion that we sourced from Willys. This is on a Dana 44 front axle. This is on our FC-150. So we have completed the other side. There are some things that have to be modified, some slight adjustments that need to be made. So we're going to walk you through that process. It's another one of those situations that you have a single sheet of instructions. If you've never been through this process before, trying to look at these tiny little photos and understand what is being said when there is actually no parts list on here, no structure as to how these components go together. If you're not familiar with this but you're considering it, this might help you, because this doesn't really lay it out for you. So we're going to walk you through the process. If you have the interest in doing a front disc brake conversion, hopefully this will help you out. So follow along, we'll show you how it goes together. Alright, so as you can see, we're building this, so this is the point to where we begin installing our conversion components. If you have an existing vehicle that you're just doing the conversion on, you want to tear the axle down to this status, if you will. So basically down to the spindle, you'll want to remove those bolts. We've got our gasket maker in here, so this is nice and sealed up. You are going to have to replace these 6 bolts on both sides to a longer 1-inch bolt, because there are some components that are going to go on this surface right here, and those are going to be the caliper mount, another bracket, and then of course your hub and everything goes out here. So these components are going to go on in this fashion, so you will, like I said, need a longer bolt. We went ahead and got grade 8 new bolts that will bolt all of this together. Your hub will set in here. Another important factor after these are in place, the hub and rotor will go on. It is crucial that the rotor is mounted on the back side of this hub, so when it goes on, it will go on in that fashion over the top of the 2 components I just showed you. And the reason for that is this rotor has to be behind the hub to make sure that the bracket for the caliper lines up with this rotor. Now on the rear, because we have aftermarket wheels, we had to use longer studs. So the kit does come with studs, but check beforehand. If you're using the steel wheels, the kit says that it will not work with steel wheels. Since we've got aftermarket aluminum wheels, we did have to go and get longer studs. So something to check out beforehand. So just kind of walk you through that real quickly before we start mounting everything together. Okay, I've temporarily got this caliper mount, this dust shield in place. I have gone ahead, but what you will need to do is mount this caliper on here as best as you can. It won't even mount all the way on, but you have to put it in place to find out what needs to be ground down. And I will have some pictures, but this caliper will need to be ground to make a little extra clearance. Now you got to be really careful not to grind too much to where you grind through the housing. It doesn't take a ton, but it does take some, especially on this higher ridge, because this right here is what will come in contact with that fill plug. So I will pull this off. I'll do the grinding on the knuckle. I will grind down the new fill plug to make sure, and this is a series of grinding, putting it together, and making sure, because you want to make sure that this caliper is going to have plenty of room to float as those brakes wear, and that this doesn't get hung up on the knuckle to where your brake pads can't actually make contact when the cylinder moves outward. So anyway, that's it. I'm going to pull this off, start doing some grinding, have a little bit of pictures and video to show what we did there. We're determining the clearance. With the caliper mount on there and the caliper mounted to it, I am sliding this caliper inward as it will adjust when the piston inside here pushes out and hits that rear pad and the rotor, it's going to pull this caliper inward. So we've ground the plug down to where it's almost flush with the knuckle, and we've continued to grind a little bit more of this edge on the knuckle as well as the housing on this caliper. Again, be really careful on the caliper housing so you don't grind through it, but there's just a touch more that we need to grind off for clearance, and then we should be good to go. We'll get all this stuff pulled off, ground down, primed, painted, and ready for final assembly. But just make sure you check your clearances so these things are going to work properly once you get them final installed. Okay, we've got the brake caliper mount installed as well as this shield, all 6 bolts. They are sealed with some gasket maker or thread sealant. Next step, we need to fill this knuckle with grease. What we've had luck with on some of our other closed knuckles is this product from John Deere. It is a cornhead grease. So we're going to put that in with a grease gun and fill this knuckle. If you've got an electric or battery powered or cordless grease gun, it makes the job faster, and it's going to use pretty much the whole thing of this to fill what we need to in here. But it's critical that this gets filled, because as soon as you put the hub on with the rotor and then the caliper and pads on here, it's going to block this fill plug. So make sure that you get that knuckle filled, this tightened down, and then we can assemble these last components here. So, right, hopefully you'll be able to see this. I've got the rear or inner wheel bearings race and seal installed, as well as the outer. So now I'm going to get that thing put on here. I'll put the washer and the first nut on to kind of hold things in place to get ready for the rest of the assembly. This will get torqued down to 50 foot-pounds, and it will be backed off, basically a 1/6, or commonly referred to as a flat. So one side of this 6-sided nut, once it's torqued down to 50 foot-pounds, you will back it off one flat or 1/6, and that'll set that bearing preload. And then after that is done, the second washer will go on, followed by the second and last nut. And then you'll fold the edge of the nut over for a positive lock, if you will, to keep that nut from backing off. And then that will set the preload on the hub. So I'll go ahead and get that done. If you're unfamiliar with how these go together, there's a couple guys that have different YouTube channels. Metal Shaper, I believe, is the one guy's name. He's very thorough. He's got a lot of great tutorial stuff out there. But if you're unsure of how an axle is actually put back together or disassembled, you may want to check that out. It goes into a little more depth and detail. But that's it. So we'll get this tightened down to 50 foot-pounds, put the second washer on, the last nut, and then we'll start putting the caliper and the brake pads on there and get this ready for final assembly. One thing to mention, there were 2 sets of bearings and races that came in this thing, as well as 2 different seal options. The bearing and race was close enough, but once we had gotten it in, tightened this first, put the first washer on for the spindle, and the first nut, tightened it down to that 50 foot-pounds, backed it off, this hub was loose and wobbly. So should you run into that and you get one of these kits and it happens to have what you would think is an extra set of bearings, make sure you know which size hub that you have, because if you put that wrong race and bearings inside and out, you'll get some play in this. So we actually found that out by utilizing the incorrect one. So it was a good thing that we caught it, but we pulled everything apart. It is now back in place with the new inner and outer races, inner and outer bearings, as well as the inner seal. So got the first spindle washer on there, got the first spindle nut on there, tightened to 50 foot-pounds, backed off 1/6. The second washer is on there, and now we'll torque this outer spindle nut down to 50 foot-pounds, and then we're going to take and fold over one of the tabs of this second washer to lock this second nut to keep it from backing off. So again, just 50 foot-pounds. All right, now it's time for the fun part. Get this caliper put on here. Now these are still going to be loose until of course the brake lines get hooked up, brakes get bled, this cylinder moves, so you'll see that kind of loose until the pressure is put to those brake pads. Okay, now with the caliper mounted on there and in place, we just have to hook up the brake line, so that way when we do the rest of the hard lines, we'll be able to hook up to this. So that's it. Good system. Again, a couple things to modify, but all in all, not horribly difficult. We hope you'll find this video helpful. So if you do decide to do a disc brake upgrade or conversion on whatever you might be running Willys era, hopefully this will help you out. But like I said, good solid components, and we're anxious to see how they work out for us. But again, we have no doubt that it's going to be a good, a worthy upgrade for sure. We'll get this locking hub from Onyx ADA, Rugged Ridge, installed, and then we'll get ready to put this thing on the ground. The reason I wanted to put this tire on here was so that way when I get it set on the ground, it'll allow me to be able to torque these bolts for the locking hub flange down a bit. Alright, so that completes it. Our front end disc brake conversion is complete. Again, we sourced that from Kaiser Willys as we did the rear disc brake conversion. If you're interested in doing a front or rear, we've got separate videos on the YouTube channel. While we were putting things together, finishing it up, it only made sense to put lockout hubs. So thanks to Onyx ADA, we put these Rugged Ridge lockout hubs on. Of course, our Milestar tires, the Patagonia MT, great tire. We've run these on other Jeeps that we have. They've got a great look to them, great off-road and on-road performance, so we're really happy to have these things on there. But now that we've got the front and rear disc brake conversions done, it's time to move on to some other things. So check out some of our other videos and the build as it progresses, but that's it. That's what it takes to do one of these conversions.